I never planned to end a 5-year relationship through a text message, but that is exactly what I did. And sometimes I still don't understand why I became that person, but here we are. So let me just tell this story from the beginning because nothing about it happened overnight. I was 28 when all this started, working in a quiet office where every day felt the same, and my boyfriend Marcus was 33, steady, loyal, calm, the type of man older folks usually say is a blessing because he paid the bills on time, cooked dinner, fixed things around the house, and cared for me in ways that made life easy, almost too easy. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe comfort can turn into a cage if you sit in it for too long. Marcus and I met through friends when I was still trying to figure out my life. He already had everything in order, savings, a plan for the next 10 years, a stable job in property management, and a rhythm to his life that never changed. At first, that stability felt like salvation, because I had grown up watching unstable relationships fall apart, and Marcus felt like a safe harbor. But over the years, the same routines that once calmed me started to make me feel like I was disappearing inside a life that wasn't growing. He woke up at the same time every day, brewed the same coffee, watched the same news channel, drove the same route to work. And I guess part of me was waiting for some moment where he'd do something unpredictable, something that showed he had fire underneath all that calm. But that moment never came, and I know how ungrateful that sounds, because he was a good man, but sometimes good can feel like quiet suffocation, and I didn't have the maturity to see it clearly back then. Around year 4 of our relationship, my new coworker Ethan joined the office. He was nothing like Marcus, loud, confident, fast-talking, full of risky ideas, the type of man who made every story sound like an adventure, and people listened when he spoke, even the older employees, and I guess that energy pulled me in slowly, not all at once. I didn't cheat right away, but I started staying late at work when I didn't have to, laughing too hard at his jokes, feeling something spark inside me that I hadn't felt in a long time, like I was waking up from a long nap. And at home Marcus would be there with dinner ready, candles lit, asking about my day with that soft voice, that gentle look, that predictable routine. And instead of feeling loved, I felt managed, like he was taking care of a plant, not a partner. And that feeling grew even though he didn't deserve it. Ethan, on the other hand, challenged me, pushed back when I shared ideas, laughed loudly in meetings, lived like consequences were optional. And for some reason that chaos felt exciting, dangerously exciting, like standing near the edge of something high and believing you could fly if you jumped. And one night, after we finished a big project, Ethan walked me to my car and the conversation felt too close, too warm, and before I could think clearly, he kissed me and I didn't stop him. I didn't even hesitate, and that moment changed everything because once you cross a line like that, you don't go back to who you were before. I told myself it was only a kiss, that I was confused, that I wouldn't let it go further, but of course it did, the next week and the week after that. And soon I was living 2 different lives, one where Marcus made breakfast and asked gentle questions, and one where Ethan pulled me into empty rooms and made me feel alive in ways I hadn't felt in years. Guilt hit me sometimes, especially at night, but it never stayed long because I buried it under the idea that Marcus wasn't giving me something I needed, something I couldn't put into words. I told myself that Marcus had made our relationship too easy, too soft, too predictable, and I needed passion, not comfort, excitement, not plans, movement, not routines, even though I knew deep down that Marcus had always been good to me, better than I deserved. The breaking point came on our 5-year anniversary. Marcus booked a nice restaurant, wore the shirt I loved, brought roses, planned everything like he always did, and while he talked about saving for a house, I felt like I was sitting in a room with no air, like the walls were closing in. My phone buzzed under the table, a message from Ethan, something simple, nothing romantic, but the timing made it feel like the universe was splitting in two. Marcus talking about a steady future, Ethan talking about taking risks, and me stuck in the middle, pretending I was still the woman Marcus thought I was. And in that moment, I swear something inside me snapped, like a tired rope finally breaking after years of pressure. I stood up, told Marcus there was a work emergency, and he didn't argue, didn't demand I stay, didn't look upset, just said okay in that calm voice. And somehow that made me even angrier, like I wanted him to fight for me, but he didn't push, he never pushed, and that was the problem. Or so I told myself. I left the restaurant and went straight to Ethan's apartment, and that was the night everything went too far to be undone. I slept with him, and in the morning, lying in his bed, convinced myself that this meant something, that leaving Marcus was the right thing. Even though deep down I knew I was destroying a good man's life for excitement that probably wouldn't last, I didn't go home. I didn't Think, I just sent Marcus a text, one line that ripped 5 years apart. I've outgrown this. I typed, I'm staying at his place tonight. We need to talk tomorrow. And I added, you don't get me the way he does. And I swear I still cringe thinking about those words because they were selfish, childish, and cruel. But I pressed send anyway and convinced myself it was brave, not heartless. The next morning I expected tears, calls, long messages, something dramatic, but Marcus didn't respond at all, not a single word, and I didn't know it then. But that silence was the first sign that the world I'd built around myself was about to collapse. When I drove back to our apartment the next day, my key didn't work. My phone was shut off. The plan had been under his name, the insurance too. Everything I relied on had been provided by him. And now it was gone. When he finally opened the door, he didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't look broken. He just said, your things are packed by the door. And he spoke with this calm, distant voice like I was a stranger, or an invoice he was closing out, and that cold finality shook something inside me, because I realized he wasn't weak, he wasn't soft, he wasn't dependent, he had simply chosen peace over my chaos, and I watched him choose a life without me, and that hurt more than anything. Ethan didn't want to become my new life partner either. He liked the thrill, not the responsibility, and very quickly I became someone he didn't know what to do with. Old friends stopped talking to me. People at work whispered, and I was left carrying the consequences alone. Marcus moved on with quiet strength, just like he lived. And from what I hear, he is happier now, stronger, living well. And sometimes I lie awake at night thinking about the truth that took me far too long to see. The problem was never that I outgrew Marcus. It was that I never grew enough to value what I had. And some lessons come too late, and some doors do not open twice, no matter how much you wish they would.